All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to dive into Bitcoin's price potential and why I believe we won't stop at 100K. We'll take a look at some key charts that demonstrate why Bitcoin may not only reach 100K, but could very well realistically and almost modestly hit 200K in this current cycle. With that being said, let's get started. So first and foremost, this is almost like my holy grail chart that I always look to in every Bitcoin cycle. And as you can see on this chart, it's mapped out Bitcoin's price progression after each halving event. Halvings occur roughly every 4 years, as many of you know, and they represent a significant reduction in the number of new Bitcoin being mined. Historically, after each halving, we've seen a strong bull market where Bitcoin's price has surged to new highs. And looking at this chart, we see clear trends from 2012, 2016, and the 2020 halvings, where price skyrocketed after each event. In 2020, Bitcoin went from $10 to over 1,000. In 2016, it jumped from 400 to 20,000, and after the 2020 halving, it soared from 10,000 to nearly 70,000 in 2021. And as you can see, they all really start hitting the steam around this point in the cycle where we are currently 200 and roughly 210 days after the halving event. And as we approach 200 days into the cycle, we are clearly going to be seeing some more momentum towards the upside. And why 200K, many people will ask, is, well, looking at previous cycles, we could see the last two ones. The first one is a bit of an outlier and it really went extreme. I don't really see that as being likely for this cycle, but the past two that have normalized a bit both got to this area on the chart. They both hit a level that would correspond to 400,000 this cycle. And so just to be safe and account for some potential diminishing returns, because as we can see, they have been coming down. The first cycle starts up here and drops down to a peak of here, and then this one drops down to a peak of over here. So accounting for diminishing returns potentially, if we drop that down a bit to around 200K, that could look very reasonable and realistic for this cycle. There's also many kind of arguments for why this past cycle dropped down that low, such as China banning Bitcoin. And we're seeing a lot of kind of confluence that showcase that Bitcoin might actually even break this to the upside this cycle, just with the mass adoption, the US strategic reserve potentially coming through. It's possible we might actually get up to these levels this cycle. Now let's switch gears a little bit and take a look at the broader economic environment. Here's a chart of the US dollar index, or DXY. This chart measures the strength of the US dollar relative to the basket of other currencies. As you can see, we're approaching what we could describe as a risk-off territory. This is when markets are generally looking for risk-off, safe investments, and we're doing this while Bitcoin is already kind of hitting all-time highs, just hitting 95K this past week. And I do see a correction and a pivot back down to the risk-on environment as we see global liquidity kind of returning, the Federal Reserve pivoting to no longer quantitative tightening, but moving towards quantitative easing. And so that kind of the risk on coming already with Bitcoin price, the Bitcoin price being at 95,000, I could see the weakening dollar is and has often been a catalyst for Bitcoin and other alternative assets to rise. Bitcoin being seen as a hedge against inflation and currency devaluation, it tends to thrive when the dollar weakens. As the DXY starts its correction and declines, we're likely going to see more institutional and retail investors flock to assets like Bitcoin, pushing its prices higher. This correlation between a weakening dollar and a rising Bitcoin price has been evident in the past. And so we could see a risk-on environment coming through soon. This is another chart where we kind of see that global liquidity hasn't even really started to kick up yet. We've been in a down cycle of global liquidity for the past 3 years. And even through that, Bitcoin has been rallying to really high prices. As we can see, the last time global liquidity kind of pivoted from quantitative tightening to easing, we really saw a sharp increase in Bitcoin's price shortly after. And I see that to be the case this time as well. We are going to be shifting to quantitative easing very soon, and that will be another catalyst for sending Bitcoin's price higher. Here we can see every time, in green you see the DXY, and in orange you see the Bitcoin price. Every time the DXY starts to crash, Bitcoin's price starts to skyrocket. You can see it here. And is that going to be the situation here as well? That time will tell. Another thing I wanted to get into was looking at when the first gold ETF was launched. We can see here, it was launched in 2004, and in the following years it rallied 346%, and even more so later on in the future. It was actually an 8-year-long bull run for gold when their ETF was first launched. And on the bottom we can see Bitcoin. This is a bit older of a chart, actually. It would go a lot higher than just 138% if we rally 340% for Bitcoin as well. And this chart is just insane. We could see these are the inflows for the gold ETF and the Bitcoin ETF in the first year. We've already blown it out of the water, so it's kind of crazy to think what Bitcoin could do if gold's ETF did 340%. Another thing I wanted to touch was the miner reserves are hitting new yearly lows. This could lead to a real supply shock in Bitcoin for the first time ever. There's been a lot of interest in Bitcoin, but not enough to actually cause a real supply shock, which will be the ultimate catalyst to send Bitcoin a lot higher. And it's possible it could happen this cycle. And here's just a common thing that people are talking about. Everyone's scared Bitcoin's just going to hit 100K and plummet. And TechDev has a perfect response here, saying the same question was asked at $1, $10, $100, $1,000, and $10,000. So if we do get a correction, which I think is possible, before we hit 100K, we could drop to 85 to 88K. I think it will be temporary, and I think we'll just shoot right past it like we have on all these other psychological levels. But yeah, that's all for today's video. Please let me know your thoughts and any feedback as well.